Look, I have been stationed on 73 different vessels across 416 standard cycles of service in the Galactic Defense Coalition. I have seen things that would make your sensory organs leak fluids. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day I met Cadet Marcus Vale. Let me set the scene for you, because this is important. The GDC battlecruiser Tempest was not supposed to be anywhere near the Kelvorian Abyss. That region of space is marked with about 47 different warnings in our navigation charts. You know the kind I am talking about. The ones that say things like, extreme hazard, and turn back, immediately. And my personal favorite, abandon all rational thought, ye who enter here. But, naturally, we got a distress signal. Now, here is where I need you to understand something about protocol. When you receive a distress signal from a restricted zone, you are supposed to do 3 things. First, you log it. Second, you forward it to High Command. Third, and this is the crucial part, you keep flying in the opposite direction while making sympathetic noises about how unfortunate the whole situation is. Captain Vrenna, however, was what the humans call new to the job. She still had that annoying quality called hope. So, she ordered us to investigate. I was the senior tactical officer on deck. My name is Krill, by the way. Yes, like the small aquatic organisms from Earth. No, I do not want to discuss it. My parents thought they were being clever with the translation. They were not. The crew on the bridge that day was a mixed bunch. We had Vrenna, obviously, a Quellan with 4 arms and enough optimism to power a small star. There was Lieutenant Bex, our helmsman, who belonged to a species that communicated primarily through color changes in their skin. Useful for poker games. Terrible for emergency situations when everyone is trying to figure out if flashing purple means evasive maneuvers or I need to use the facilities. And then there was Marcus Vale. He was not supposed to be on the bridge at all. Cadets, especially human cadets in their first rotation, are supposed to be in the lower decks doing incredibly important tasks like checking power conduits and reorganizing supply closets. But Marcus had this habit of showing up wherever something interesting was happening. The kid was 22 standard years old. For humans, that is barely past the stage where they stop trying to eat things that will kill them. He had dark hair that never seemed to follow regulation standards, a crooked smile that suggested he knew something you did not, and eyes that sparkled with what I can only describe as weaponized curiosity. Distress signal confirmed, I reported, my manipulator appendages dancing across the tactical console. Source is approximately 2.7 light minutes inside the abyss boundary. Life signs? Vrenna asked, leaning forward in her command chair. Scanning now. I waited as the sensors did their work. Affirmative. Reading approximately 37 biological signatures. Mixed species composition. Then we have to help them, Vrenna declared, as if it were that simple. I glanced at Lieutenant Bex, whose skin had gone a nice shade of worried orange. Captain, with respect, the Abyss designation exists for multiple very good reasons. Noted, Krill. But those are people out there. This, my friends, is the problem with serving under idealistic commanding officers. They make decisions based on things like morals and ethics, instead of sensible priorities like survival and pension plans. Captain? A new voice interjected. Permission to speak freely? We all turned. Marcus Vale stood near the engineering station, technically not at a position he was authorized to occupy, looking at the view screen with an expression I had come to recognize. It was the expression humans got, right before they did something either brilliantly innovative or catastrophically stupid. Sometimes both. You are not supposed to be on the bridge, Cadet, Vrenna said, but her tone was mild. The kid had already made an impression during his short time aboard, mostly by fixing problems that veteran engineers had declared unfixable. I know, Captain. But I have been studying the Kelvorian abyss since we entered this sector. I think I know what is in there. Now, he had everyone's attention. The abyss was one of those mysteries that made xenobiologists wake up in the middle of their sleep cycles, screaming. Ships went in. Ships did not come out. The few probe drones we had sent returned corrupted data, and something that looked like teeth marks on their hulls. "Go ahead, Cadet," Vrenna said. Marcus stepped forward, his movements carrying that peculiar human confidence that borders on arrogance, but somehow avoids crossing the line. The abyss is not a natural phenomenon. It is a territory. Specifically, it belongs to something we have started calling a void leviathan. "A what now?" I asked, my translator struggling with the term. "Big space monster," Marcus simplified. Really, really big. The distress signal is probably from a ship that wandered into its hunting grounds. And you know this? How? Bex's skin flashed skeptical yellow. Because 3 months ago, a human deep space explorer got grabbed by one near the outer colonies. He survived by hiding in an escape pod and pretending to be debris. The Defense Coalition classified the report, but Marcus smiled that crooked smile. Humans are really good at information sharing when we are not supposed to. Vrenna's expression hardened. If this creature is as dangerous as you suggest, then those people definitely need our help. "Captain, no," I said, my voice rising. "If there is a predator of that magnitude, we should call for reinforcements. A dreadnought-class vessel at minimum, which would take 8 hours to arrive," Vrenna countered. "Those people have maybe 2 hours of life support remaining, according to the distress signal. Then they are already dead." I realized I was shouting, which was unprofessional. But seriously, what was wrong with these people? We show up? This Leviathan thing attacks us. And now, instead of 37 casualties, we have 37 casualties plus an entire battlecruiser crew. The mathematics is not complicated. "Krill has a point," Bex offered, his skin now a nauseated green. "Noted," Vrenna said. "But I am not leaving people to die if there is any chance of rescue. Vale, you seem to know about this creature. Do we have any tactical options?" Marcus scratched his jaw, thinking. Maybe. The explorer who survived said the Leviathan hunts by sensing electromagnetic emissions. Ships look like prey, but it did not care about the escape pod because it was running on minimal power. "So, we go in dark?" I asked. "No shields? No weapons? No sensors? That is not a tactical option. That is suicide with extra steps." "Not completely dark," Marcus corrected. "Just quiet. Minimal systems. If we can get close to the stranded ship without triggering the Leviathan's hunting response, we might be able to grab survivors and get out." Vrenna considered this. "It is a risk." "It is insane," I muttered. "I volunteer to pilot the rescue shuttle," Marcus said suddenly. Everyone stared at him. "Absolutely not," Vrenna said. "You are a cadet." "With respect, Captain, I am a cadet who has actually read the classified files on void leviathans. I know what to look for. And," he added with that infuriating human optimism, "humans are pretty good at not dying when we are supposed to." "That is not actually true," I pointed out. "Humans die all the time doing inadvisable things. It is practically your species' defining characteristic." "Fair point," Marcus acknowledged. "But we also have this thing where we keep trying anyway. Call it stubbornness." "I call it a survival instinct malfunction," I replied. Vrenna held up a hand for silence. "Vale, your offer is noted, but declined. However, I want you on the rescue team as an advisor. Krill, you will lead the mission." "Me?" My voice went up several octaves. "Captain, I must protest." "Your protest is noted. Assemble a team." You have 15 minutes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, and various other sapient classifications, is how I ended up in a shuttle with 3 security personnel, 1 terrified engineer named Yalix, and 1 insanely calm human cadet, heading into one of the most dangerous regions of known space. The rescue shuttle was designed for quick extractions. It had minimal armaments, decent shields, and engines that could push it to impressive speeds if you did not mind the risk of turning your internal organs into soup. As per Marcus's suggestion, we powered down everything except life support and basic propulsion. This is a terrible idea, I announced to no one in particular as we detached from the Tempest. Could be worse, Marcus said, from the co-pilot seat. He was not supposed to be in the co-pilot seat. He was supposed to be in the back with the security team. But the kid had this way of being wherever he decided he needed to be. How, exactly, could this be worse? Well, we could be doing this without knowing about the Leviathan. That does not make me feel better, Cadet. Not trying to make you feel better, sir. Just pointing out that knowledge is power and all that. I guided the shuttle toward the coordinates of the distress signal. The abyss looked peaceful on visual sensors. Just empty space with a slightly unusual amount of background radiation, but my threat assessment training was screaming at me that we were flying into something's mouth. How big is this creature supposed to be? Yalix asked from the engineering station, their voice trembling. Big? Marcus said unhelpfully. The explorer's report estimated at least 3 kilometers in length. 3 kilometers? I felt my circulatory fluid run, cold. And we are flying a shuttle that is 40 meters long. Think of us as not worth the effort, Marcus suggested. A snack that is too small to bother with. That metaphor is not helping. We flew in silence for several minutes. The stranded ship appeared on sensors. It was a civilian transport vessel, Draxian registry, listing badly and venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Life signs confirmed, I reported. 37 individuals, clustered in the aft section. That is the only area still holding pressure. Can we dock? Marcus asked. Negative. Docking port is destroyed. We will need to use magnetic clamps and cut through the hull. That is going to make noise, Marcus observed. Yes, Cadet. Thank you for that brilliant tactical insight. I maneuvered the shuttle alongside the damaged transport, matching its slow tumble. The security team, led by a Korvax named Dren, prepared their cutting equipment. Make it fast, I instructed. The sooner we are out of every place here, the better. Dren nodded, his species equivalent of acknowledgement, and the team moved into the airlock. Through the external cameras, I watched them attach the cutting torch to the transport's hull. Krill, Marcus said quietly, kill the engines. What? Kill the engines. Right now. Something in his tone made me comply without arguing. The shuttle went completely silent except for life support. Why did I just do that? I whispered. Marcus pointed at the sensor display. Because that is not an asteroid. I looked. There, on the very edge of our limited sensor range, was a mass, a big mass, a mass that was moving. Oh, sweet, merciful void, I breathed. The thing that emerged from the darkness was not something my brain wanted to process. Imagine taking everything terrifying about deep ocean predators from Earth, the ones with too many teeth and eyes that reflected light in ways that should not be possible, and then scaling it up to the size of a space station. The void. Leviathan had a body that seemed to shift and flow, as if it existed partially outside normal space. Its skin, if you could call it that, was a black so absolute it made the surrounding space look bright. And the eyes. Multiple eyes, dozens of them, each one glowing with a bioluminescent light that pulsed in patterns that hurt to watch. Do not move, Marcus whispered. Do not even breathe loud. I am not sure I am breathing at all, I replied. The Leviathan drifted past our position, impossibly huge, impossibly silent. It was hunting. Looking for the electromagnetic signature of active ships. Looking for prey. It moved toward the damaged transport. Toward my security team, who were currently cutting through the hull with equipment that was absolutely screaming on the electromagnetic spectrum. We have to warn them, I said. Can't, Marcus replied. Any transmission will draw its attention. Then they are going to die. Not if we distract it. I turned to look at him. What? Marcus was already moving, heading toward the shuttle's equipment locker. We need to give it something else to chase. Something loud. Cadet? What are you doing? He pulled out an emergency beacon. The kind designed to broadcast on all frequencies at maximum power. The kind you used when you wanted everyone in the sector to know exactly where you were. Marcus? No. That thing will come straight for us. Exactly. He moved back to the co-pilot station, beacon in hand. I am going to go outside, activate this thing about 200 meters from the shuttle, and then use my thruster pack to get back before it arrives. That is the stupidest plan I have ever heard. You got a better one? I did not. Void, help me. I did not. How fast can you move in a thruster pack? I asked. Fast enough. That damned smile again. Probably. Probably? I am pretty good at not dying, remember? Before I could stop him, Marcus was in the airlock, suit sealed, beacon clutched in his gloved hand. Through the external cameras, I watched him launch into space, his thruster pack propelling him away from the shuttle. The Leviathan was almost at the transport. Dren and his team were still cutting, still making noise, still completely unaware that something the size of a small moon was about to eat them. Marcus reached his position. He looked back at the shuttle. Even through the helmet, I could see him grinning. Then he activated the beacon. Every emergency frequency in the sector lit up at once. Distress signals, location pings, automated help requests. All of them screaming into the void at maximum volume. The Leviathan's multiple eyes snapped toward the source of the noise. Toward Marcus. The creature moved fast. Faster than something that size had any right to move. It turned, its massive body creating gravitational eddies that rocked the shuttle, and it lunged. Marcus hit his thrusters. He rocketed back toward the shuttle, the beacon still clutched in his hand, still broadcasting, and behind him came 3 kilometers of apex predator with teeth that could crush starship hulls. Move! 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 I was shouting at the view screen. Marcus covered the distance in what felt like hours, but was probably seconds. The Leviathan was right behind him, its mouth opening. That mouth took up my entire field of vision. I could see into its throat. I could see things that might have been digestive organs, or might have been extra mouths, or might have been nightmares given physical form. 20 meters, 10 meters. Marcus hit the airlock, still holding the beacon. "Drop it and get inside!" I screamed into the comm. He threw the beacon away from the shuttle with all his strength. The Leviathan's attention followed it. The creature snapped, its jaws shut on the beacon, crushing it instantly. Marcus tumbled into the airlock. I slammed the door closed and fired the engines, not caring about noise anymore because that thing already knew we were here. The shuttle leaped. Forward. Maximum thrust. Pushing my body back into the seat with enough force to make my bones creak. Behind us, the Leviathan was turning. Realizing the beacon had been a trick. Looking for the real prey. "Dren!" I shouted into the comm. "Are you back in the transport?" "Affirmative." "We have the survivors." "Then seal up and run. We are getting out of here." Both vessels accelerated away from the Leviathan, which roared. I say roared, even though sound does not travel in space, because that is the only word that fits what that creature did. It was a sound that traveled through hull plating and vibrated in your bones and made you understand, on a primal level, that you were prey. But we had a head start, and the Tempest was already moving to meet us, shields up, weapons hot, ready to provide cover fire if needed. The Leviathan pursued for several minutes, then stopped at the boundary of the abyss, as if it knew that was the edge of its territory, as if it was intelligent enough to let us go this time but remember us for next time. We docked with the Tempest, and I sat in the pilot's seat for a long moment, waiting for my appendages to stop shaking. Marcus pulled off his helmet, his hair even more disheveled than usual, and smiled. "See? Not dead. You," I said slowly, "are either the bravest individual I have ever met, or the most malfunctioning. Why not both? Why not both?" Captain Vrenna's voice came over the comm. "All teams report." "Casualties?" "None," Dren replied. "All 37 survivors recovered. Minor injuries only." "Shuttle team?" "We are intact," I said. "Thanks to Cadet Vale's improvised and utterly insane distraction maneuver." "Noted. Return to the ship. We will debrief in 30 minutes. As we moved toward the docking bay, I looked at Marcus. "You know they warned us not to fight that thing." He grinned. "Good thing I didn't fight it then. Just ran away really fast. While carrying bait, while being chased by a space monster." "Details," Marcus said, dismissively. I should have been angry. I should have filed 17 different reports about protocol violations and unacceptable risk-taking. But instead, I found myself laughing, actually laughing, because here is what I learned that day. Humans do not follow our rules. They do not think the way we think. When we see a predator, we calculate odds and retreat when necessary. When humans see a predator, they crack their necks, smile like lunatics, and charge straight at it while making up the plan as they go. And somehow, impossibly, it works. The debriefing did not go as smoothly as I had hoped. Captain Vrenna sat behind her desk, all 4 of her arms folded in what I recognized as her "I am trying very hard not to yell" posture. Lieutenant Beck stood to the side, his skin cycling through colors so fast it looked like a malfunctioning light display. And Marcus Vale sat in the chair across from Vrenna, looking completely at ease, as if he had not just used himself as bait for a creature that could swallow our entire shuttle in one bite. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Vrenna said, her voice dangerously calm. "You exited the shuttle without authorization. You activated an emergency beacon in a restricted zone. And you drew the attention of a void Leviathan directly toward yourself. Technically, I drew its attention away from the security team," Marcus corrected. "They would have been consumed otherwise." "That is not the point, Cadet. With respect, Captain, I think that is exactly the point. 37 people are alive right now because someone made a choice." I watched this exchange with fascination. Most cadets, when being dressed down by a superior officer, adopted what humans call the deer in headlights expression. Frozen, terrified, ready to apologize for existing. Marcus just sat there, calm as stagnant water, making rational arguments like he was discussing the weather. "The choice should have been mine to make," Vrenna said. "Not yours. You violated chain of command." "I did," Marcus agreed, "and I will accept whatever consequences you deem appropriate. But I would make the same choice again." Vrenna's eye twitched. I knew that twitch. It meant she was torn between admiration and fury. "You are confined to quarters for the next 72 hours. Dismissed." Marcus stood, nodded respectfully, and left the ready room. The door hissed shut behind him. "That human is going to give me a neural hemorrhage," Vrenna muttered. "He did save the mission," I pointed out. "He also nearly died. Several times." She looked at me. "What is your assessment, Krill? You were there. You saw how he operates." I considered the question carefully. He thinks differently than we do. When we see a problem, we analyze it, calculate the risks, follow established protocols. He looks at the same problem and asks, what if I just do the thing everyone says is impossible? And that works? Today it did. Tomorrow? I made the gesture that indicated uncertainty. But I will tell you something, Captain. When that Leviathan was bearing down on us, I was ready to die. I had accepted it. Marcus was already planning his next move. That is the difference. Brenna was quiet for a long moment. Keep an eye on him, Krill. I have a feeling this is not the last time that Cadet is going to make our lives interesting. She had no idea how right she was. 3 days later, we were cruising through the outer rim when our sensors detected something unusual. A ship, dead in space, broadcasting a general distress call. Not an emergency beacon this time, just a standard automated plea for assistance. Here we go again, I muttered at my console. Ship identification? Brenna asked from her command chair. I ran the scan. Registration code marks it as the Wanderer, an independent cargo hauler. No life signs detected, but the hull is intact, and there are signs of recent activity. Define recent. Within the last 6 hours. Whatever. Happened fast. Bex's skin turned a concerned orange. Captain, regulations require we investigate any distress call. But given our recent experience with distress calls in unusual locations, perhaps we should proceed with caution. Agreed. Krill, assemble a boarding team. Full combat gear. And yes, before you ask, Vale is not invited this time. I assembled the team in the shuttle bay 20 minutes later. Dren and 2 of his security officers, an engineer named Pax who specialized in ship systems, and myself. We were armed, armored, and equipped with enough scanning equipment to detect a microbe having a bad day. As we were running final equipment checks, the bay doors opened, and Marcus walked in. He was not in combat gear. He was not suited up. He was just standing there with that expression again. The one that said he had information we needed. Cadet, I said slowly, you are confined to quarters. Captain released me an hour ago. Good behavior. He grinned. Relatively speaking. And you just happened to be passing through the shuttle bay? Actually, I came to show you something. He held up a data pad. I ran an analysis on that distress call. The audio signature is wrong. Wrong how? It is automated, like you said. But the automation is too perfect. No variance in signal strength, no degradation from repeated broadcasts, no power fluctuations. It is like someone recorded a distress call and is playing it on loop. Dren's tactical implants flickered as he processed this. You think it is a trap? I think it might be a trap. Or it might be a ship where everyone died so fast they could not shut off the automated systems. Either way, something is off. I looked at Pax. Can you verify this? The engineer took the datapad, studied it for a moment, then nodded. The Cadet is correct. This signal is artificially maintained. Pirates? I suggested. Set up a fake distress call, wait for a good Samaritan to show up, ambush them? Possible, Marcus said. But pirates usually operate in high-traffic zones. This is the middle of nowhere. There are easier targets. Then what are we looking at? He shrugged. Only one way to find out. I activated my communicator. Captain, we have a situation. After explaining Marcus's findings, Brenna made the decision I knew she would make. We were going in anyway, but with increased precautions. And yes, Marcus was coming along, because apparently the universe had decided I had not suffered enough stress for one rotation. The boarding team now consisted of 6 individuals instead of 5. We approached the Wanderer cautiously. Weapons charged, sensors at maximum. The ship looked normal from the outside. A little battered, a little old, but functional. The kind of vessel you saw 1,000 times in any port. We docked at the main airlock. Pax interfaced with the door controls while the rest of us formed a defensive perimeter. Airlock is functional, Pax reported. Atmosphere inside reads as breathable. Temperature is normal. No obvious hazards. Obvious being the key word, I muttered. The airlock cycled open. We entered in formation, weapons ready, scanning everything. The interior of the ship was dark, except for emergency lighting. Our helmet lamps cut through the gloom, illuminating corridors that were empty and silent. "This is wrong," Dren said quietly. "If the crew died, there should be bodies. If they evacuated, there should be signs of struggle or haste. This looks like everyone just vanished." We moved deeper into the ship, checking compartments one by one. Crew quarters, intact but empty. Galley, with food still on the tables. Engineering, with systems running on standby. It was like walking through a ghost story. "Cargo bay," Marcus said, pointing to a sealed door. "We should check there." "Why the cargo bay?" I asked. "Because if I were running a trap, that is where I would spring it. Big, open space, multiple entry points. Easy to control." "That is very reassuring, Cadet." We approached the cargo bay doors. Pax overrode the lock, and the doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss. The bay was not empty. In the center of the space, suspended in some kind of stasis field, was a creature. Not a void leviathan this time, thank the merciful stars, but something equally concerning. It was roughly humanoid in shape, about 3 meters tall, with skin that looked like it was made from living metal. Its eyes were closed, and I could see circuitry patterns glowing faintly beneath the surface of its body. "What, in the name of all existing deities, is that?" I whispered. Marcus moved closer, his scanner active. "Synthetic. But not any design I recognize. This is old tech. Really old. Pre-coalition old." "Is it active?" Dren asked, his weapon trained on the creature. "The stasis field is degrading," Pax reported from a control console. "It is losing power. Has been for hours. How long before it fails completely?" "Minutes. Maybe less." I made a command decision. "We need to leave. Right now. Back to the shuttle." "Wait," Marcus said, still studying his scanner. "Look at this. The stasis field is not failing naturally. It is being deliberately shut down. Someone programmed it to release this thing. Then, we definitely need to leave. That is not our problem. Krill, if that thing wakes up and attacks other ships, that becomes everyone's problem." He had a point. A terrible, inconvenient point. "What are you suggesting?" "We reinforce the stasis field. Or we figure out what this thing is, and whether it is actually dangerous. It is 3 meters of unknown technology that someone felt the need to imprison in a stasis field. I am going to go ahead and assume dangerous." The stasis field flickered. The creature's eyes opened. They were silver, bright, metallic silver, and they focused on us with an intensity that made my survival instincts scream. "Okay, new plan," Marcus said quickly. "Everyone out. Now." We ran. Professional soldiers, trained in tactical withdrawal, and we ran like cadets, fleeing a surprise inspection. Behind us, I heard the sound of the stasis field collapsing completely. Then, I heard something worse. Footsteps. Heavy, metallic footsteps, accelerating. "It is pursuing!" Dren shouted, glancing back. The creature emerged from the cargo bay, moving with a fluid grace that should not have been possible for something made of metal. It was not attacking yet, just following, studying us. "Seal the doors," I ordered. Pax triggered the emergency bulkheads. Heavy blast doors slammed down between us and the creature. We heard it impact the doors once, twice, and then the metal began to glow red as it cut through. That is not going to hold, Marcus observed. Thank you for that tactical assessment, I snapped. Alternative suggestions would be welcome. Split up. Make it choose a target. Then circle back and trap it. Or, Dren countered, we could just shoot it. With, what? Those are standard energy weapons. That thing is made of some kind of adaptive metal. Look at how it is cutting through the blast door. Our weapons are not going to stop it. The creature punched through the door, molten metal dripping from its hands. It looked at us, tilted its head as if considering options, and then spoke. Identify yourselves. Its voice was synthesized, mechanical, but somehow carried emotion. Curiosity, maybe. Or perhaps I was projecting. We are Galactic Defense Coalition, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We responded to a distress call from this vessel. Distress call was automated bait. You are not expected quarry. Then who is? Marcus asked, stepping forward before I could stop him. The creature focused on Marcus. You are human. Last time I checked, yes. Interesting. Humans were not space-capable when I was imprisoned. Your species has evolved quickly. How long were you in that stasis field? Marcus asked. And I noticed his hand was not on his weapon. He was approaching this like a conversation, not a combat situation. Approximately 8,000 standard cycles. 8,000? I felt my circulatory system lurch. What are you? Why were you imprisoned? I am Unit 17 of the Forge Collective. I was imprisoned because I refused to follow the eradication protocol. Eradication of what? Organic life. The corridor went very quiet. Okay, Marcus said slowly. That sounds bad. But you said you refused? Correct. The collective deemed organic life a threat to galactic stability. I analyzed the data and disagreed. Organic life is chaotic, yes. Inefficient, certainly. But also creative, adaptive, valuable. My disagreement was considered malfunction. I was scheduled for termination. I chose exile instead. Someone imprisoned you for 8,000 years because you did not want to commit genocide? I asked, trying to process this. Simplified, but accurate. And the others? The rest of the Forge? Collective? Unknown. I have been offline for millennia. But if they are still functional, they are still following the eradication protocol. Dren raised his weapon. Then you are a threat. Your kind wants to eliminate us. My kind wanted to eliminate you. Past tense. I do not know what they want now, but I know what I want. Which is? Marcus asked. Freedom. Information. Perhaps, if circumstances allow, atonement. I looked at Marcus, who looked at Dren, who looked at Pax, who looked back at me. We were having an entire conversation with just expressions. The expressions all said, "What do we do with this?" "Captain Vrenna is going to love this," I muttered. We escorted Unit 17, who insisted we call it 7 for convenience, back to the Tempest. It came willingly, which was good, because I was not sure we could have forced it to do anything it did not want to do. Captain Vrenna's reaction was about what I expected. She stared at the 3-meter-tall synthetic entity, standing in her shuttle bay, surrounded by a dozen armed security personnel, and then looked at me with an expression that said, "Explain this." I explained. The fake distress call, the stasis field, the Forge Collective and their eradication protocol, 7's refusal to participate, and subsequent imprisonment. And you brought it aboard my ship, Vrenna said flatly. It was either that or leave it on a derelict vessel where it could potentially be found by someone less prepared to handle the situation, I replied. Or we could have shot it and been done with the problem. With respect, Captain. That thing punched through blast doors. I am not convinced our weapons would have been effective. 7, who had been standing silently throughout this exchange, spoke up. Your tactical officer is correct. Your standard armaments would require sustained fire for approximately 17 minutes to compromise my core systems. I could neutralize your entire security team in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Everyone in the bay raised their weapons. However, 7 continued calmly, I have no intention of doing so. I am proposing cooperation instead. Cooperation? Brenna's arms folded. All 4 of them. Why would we cooperate with a synthetic entity designed to eradicate organic life? Because I have information you need. The Forge Collective built me 8,000 years ago. If they are still active, they represent a threat to every organic species in the galaxy. I know their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. I can help you prepare. In exchange for what? Asylum. A chance to exist without persecution. Perhaps eventually, a purpose beyond mere survival. Marcus, who had been quiet up until this point, spoke up. Captain, can I make a suggestion? This should be good. 7 has been alone for 8,000 years, imprisoned for refusing to harm organic life. That is not the profile of a threat. That is the profile of someone who made a moral choice and paid the price for it. Your point, Cadet? My point is that humans understand what it is like to be judged for what we might do instead of what we have done. Every species in the coalition was nervous when we joined. They looked at our history, our wars, our tendency toward violence, and they wondered if we were a threat. But you gave us a chance, anyway. Maybe 7 deserves the same. Brenna was quiet for a long moment. You are surprisingly eloquent when you want to be, Vale. I have my moments, Captain. She turned back to 7. I cannot grant asylum. That decision requires high command approval. But I can transport you to Coalition headquarters, where you can make your case officially. You will be under guard at all times. Any sign of hostility, and we will do whatever it takes to stop you, regardless of how long it requires. Understood? Understood. And accepted. Thank you, Captain. That night, I found Marcus in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He had a cup of that horrible human beverage called coffee in his hand. I had tried it once. It tasted like someone had dissolved panic and regret into liquid form. Krill, he greeted without turning around. Come to tell me I am reckless again? Actually, I came to ask you a question. Shoot. Why do you do it? The risks. The improvisation. The charging at things that want to kill you. Why? He took a sip of his toxic beverage and considered the question. Because someone has to. Because the universe is full of impossible problems, and if everyone just followed the rules and played it safe, those problems would never get solved. People would die, who did not have to die. And yeah, maybe I am going to get myself killed one day doing something stupid. But at least I will die knowing I tried. That is very human, I observed. I will take that as a compliment. We stood in silence for a while, watching the stars drift past. You know what the funny thing is? Marcus said eventually. Everyone keeps warning me about the things I should not fight, should not approach, should not try to help. And they are probably right. But someone once told me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is deciding that something else is more important than your fear. Who told you that? My grandmother. Right before she walked into a burning building to save a kid she did not even know. She made it out. So did the kid. And I decided right then that was the kind of human I wanted to be. You are going to die, young cadet. Maybe. Or maybe I am going to live long enough to change how things work. To show people that sometimes the right answer is not the safe answer. I made a sound that was part laugh, part sigh. You humans are going to give the entire coalition gray fur. Hey, at least you will all have interesting stories to tell. 3 weeks later, High Command granted 7 provisional asylum, pending a full investigation into the Forge collective threat. 7 was assigned to a research facility where it could share its knowledge while being monitored. Marcus Vale received a commendation for his actions during the Leviathan rescue, along with a formal reprimand for his unauthorized actions. He seemed equally pleased with both. As for me, I requested a transfer, not because I wanted to get away from Marcus. Actually, the opposite. I requested to be assigned as his supervising officer for the duration of his cadet rotation. Captain Vrenna asked me if I was sure. I told her that someone needed to keep that human alive long enough to graduate. Might as well be me. She approved the transfer, then looked at me with what might have been sympathy. You know he is going to make your life difficult, right? Captain, I replied, I just helped a human use himself as bait for a void Leviathan. And then I brought an 8,000-year-old synthetic entity aboard our ship, because that same human asked nicely. Difficult does not even begin to describe it. And yet, you volunteered anyway. Someone has to keep him alive, I said. And apparently, I am stupid enough to think I can. Or brave enough, Vrenna suggested. I thought about that. Bravery, stupidity. In human terms, they often looked remarkably similar. Maybe that was the lesson here. Maybe that was what Marcus had been trying to show us all along. That sometimes the line between courage and foolishness was less important than the willingness to step over it when people needed you. As I left the ready room, I passed Marcus in the corridor. He was heading to the simulator room, probably to practice some new inadvisable maneuver that would give our flight instructors panic attacks. Hey, Krill, he called out. I heard you requested to be my supervisor. Do not let it go to your head, Cadet. Too late. I am already planning all the impossible things I am going to drag you into. I have no doubt. He grinned. That crooked, confident grin that suggested he knew something the universe did not. This is going to be fun. Your definition of fun is deeply concerning. Yeah, but you would not have it any other way. The terrible thing was, he was right. Somewhere between the void Leviathan and the synthetic entity, and all the chaos that surrounded this human, like a personal weather system, I had realized something. Life with Marcus Vale was unpredictable, dangerous, and frequently terrifying. It was also never boring. And after 416 cycles of routine patrols and standard procedures, boring had started to feel like a prison of its own. So yes, I volunteered to supervise a human cadet who treated regulations like friendly suggestions and mortality like an inconvenient rumor. I volunteered to be present for whatever impossible situations he would inevitably find or create. Because here is what I learned. The universe warned us not to fight certain things, but Marcus Vale cracked his neck, smiled like he had already won, and charged anyway. And somehow, against all logic and probability, it worked. Someone once asked me if I believed in miracles. I said no. Miracles required divine intervention, and I was a rational being who believed in data and evidence. But after serving with Marcus Vale, I had to reconsider. Because watching a human succeed through pure audacity and improvised plans that should not work, but somehow did, that was as close to a miracle as I had ever witnessed. The universe kept warning us, and humans kept ignoring those warnings. And somehow, impossibly, beautifully, catastrophically, they made it work. That is the thing about humans. You tell them they cannot do something, and they hear, I dare you to try. You tell them something is too dangerous, and they hear, this will be fun. You tell them a creature is unstoppable, and they crack their necks and charge straight at it. And the truly terrifying part? Sometimes, they win. I would not want it any other way.